Hey, we've talked before about you being the bottleneck for your whole business. What if the conversations that you're having with yourself are actually the things that are holding you back? That's what we're talking about. I have got a neuro coach expert on today. Stick around.
This is the Franchise Pitfalls and Profit Show. Each week, we bring you the challenges and triumphs of being in the franchise development and consulting business. The things you need to make money faster. And now your host, one of the most successful franchise developers in North America, Don Shin.
All right, it didn't bring you in automatically, but that's okay. Hey, Christine, how are you?
Hello, I'm good, Don. How are you?
I'm terrific. I am really excited about this because I think this topic and what you do has incredible potential, particularly for the audience. Anybody that's a solopreneur, anybody that works by themselves, or anybody that leads a company. I think this has tremendous impact. I've been seeing it in the 26 years or so that I've been around coaching and starting businesses and stuff. So I'm really, really excited. But let me introduce you first, and then we're going to dive right in because I want to spend all the time asking you questions. So, okay?
Sounds good.
All right, audience. Christine is a neuro coach. She works with high achieving entrepreneurs. She has 10 years of experience coaching business owners. She has two coaching certificates. She helps people identify limiting beliefs and then set the course for how they can make improvements in their behavior that's going to start to chip away at the things that are holding them back based on what's going on in their head. So,
Yes,
anything else you want to add to that quick, Christine, before we get started?
I think you summarized it quite well.
All right, awesome, awesome. Well, again, I am just jazzed. Just for my audience sake, Christine and I met at a networking event, and it wasn't a traditional networking event. She was doing kind of a mini workshop, if you will, or mini
Yep.
mastermind, if you will. And this was the reason I went to it. Well, there's two reasons. I won't talk about the one, but the it's my daughter's business, but. The other one was very, very specifically because this is indeed a topic I have seen a lot of people struggle. And what's
Yeah.
cool about what Christine does is it not only helps you in your business, it can actually help you in life overall. So,
For sure.
so that's why I'm really, really excited to have you on the podcast today. So let me kind of set the stage, and then I'm going to dive in and kind of pepper you with some questions. Is that all right?
That sounds good. I'm ready to
Awesome.
be
Okay.
peppered.
All right, here we go. So, one of the things I like to do is to introduce my audience to experts like you because I want people to improve. One of the key things about my personal mission is that I help people become who God has created them to be and who God wants them to be to do the things He wants them to do. So, this kind of thing is very, very practical. It's right up my alley, and that's why I wanted to do this. What I have found in my own experience is what's between the 5 inches or 6 inches or whatever between your ears. What's going on there is incredibly powerful. We say things to ourselves that we would never say to our best friends,
Mm,
and we talk to ourselves more than we probably talk to anybody else.
mm.
So that's the reason I really wanted you on the episode today. So let's just get started with a little bit more depth about you. How did you get into this field? I mean, we just don't.
Right.
I say business coaches. You walk 5 yards, you get a trip over a business coach, but
Yeah.
that's not what you do. And I rarely find folks in your space. So how did you get into all of this? Just to get us started.
Yeah. So quickly in 2014, I started a franchise. The franchise was publishing magazines. So I launched my first magazine in 2014 and my second one in 2016. And pretty immediately after launching the first magazine, I was invited to begin coaching the other franchise owners on how to run their businesses and to succeed. And I was trained as a business coach. But what I realized rather quickly was that even though the franchise owners knew exactly what they needed to do every single day, and the company provided the scripts, the step-by-step activities that we needed to do. If things weren't right, like you said, in those 5 inches between the ears, if this wasn't right, they weren't taking the steps. They weren't taking the action they needed to take. So that's how I sort of kept falling, it sort of fell into the mindset work that I do today.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So most people, the first kind of space I want to work in is that I think most people would think that once you're successful, you don't have this problem anymore. And so I wanted to hear your thoughts on that. What are your experiences? Because when we talked about the intro, it said high performing entrepreneurs and business
Right.
owners. So I wanted to go there because I don't want people that are listening to go, oh, I'm already pretty successful. I don't need this. So talk
Yeah.
to me about how this can impact anybody, whether you're successful. It's not just for people who might be struggling.
Well, so I think that, one of the reasons that high achievers typically work with coaches is that when you are striving for more, it's only when you're striving for more that you run into yourself. And by that, I mean, that's when you run into your limiting beliefs. And
Mhm.
it's until you're pushing yourself to the next level and wanting to achieve something greater that you realize where your limitations lie. And the limitations are always what's going on in your head. And so, high performers, if I would say this, if people are successful and they're very satisfied with their success and they don't want more, then by all means, stay there and be content. But
Yeah.
if you're successful and you know that there's more, that you can achieve more, and you have a desire on your heart to do more, but you can't figure out how to make that happen, that's where you've reached your limit. You've reached your identity limit of what your brain is capable of allowing you to do.
That's really really interesting. I have found in a lot of cases, even the rock stars, there might just be one thing that's holding them back from being off the charts, out of this world, kind of successful. So it very much, well, I'm sure it's very much is limiting beliefs. So that's awesome. So the just kind of a follow up question is, how does this show up? What are, without telling people's names or whatever, but how does some of your clients, how is this showing up? How would someone who maybe's never even heard of limiting beliefs or even thought about it, what are they gonna be experiencing or seeing that will help them
So
identify
one
it?
of the first things is that maybe they know what they should be doing in order to achieve their next goal, and they're not doing it. So the easiest way to understand, to dig in and try to find where your limiting beliefs lie, is to look at your behavior. Look at your desire and then look at your behavior, and do they match?
Interesting.
So if you're, if there's something simple like, a person's running a business and, they're operating within something where, like, if you as the founder are not running the business, and so you're not able to take a break, you're not able to step away, then the behavior is you're the one running the business. And so then you have to go a little bit deeper and say, well, why haven't you developed your team? What's going on in your mindset, your mind, about delegating and about giving up control?
Yeah.
Right there, that's a whole, that line, that behavior is underneath that simple behavior is a universe of limiting beliefs and
Yeah.
identities that the person is protecting.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. And there's no doubt I can do it better than anybody I hire or pay is clearly the attitude of
Yes.
80% of business owners out there. And they even pay people to do things and still step in and do it anyway.
Yes.
So that's awesome. Are there any of these, as we're kind of still talking about the individual and seeing it and being aware of it, any of them surprise you as you've been doing this over the years? Any limiting beliefs that have been a surprise?
The limiting belief that is a surprise is, and you touched on this earlier when you said you see someone where there's just one line of thinking that is preventing them from being a complete and total wild success. And what I find is that the limiting belief, the thing is the thing that they've spent their whole life trying to prove wrong, like on a deeper level, right? So whether or not it's that somehow along the line they got the idea that they are not smart, right? Maybe they're just not smart enough. Okay. That was a message that was given to them. Usually we look back, we can pinpoint times in childhood, they know where that happened, that occurred. Now this is coaching. So we're not unpacking that. Like, we're not spending a lot of time ruminating on that and why it happened and all of the circumstances around it. But we're saying, okay, this thought that you have, this identity that is underlying you holding yourself back because you're not smart enough, getting more certifications. I have 2 certifications now. What, right? So, but, and I have to constantly refrain myself from getting more and tell myself, no, Christine, you're doing a great job. Like, your clients are transforming. You don't need more. Now, I might get more, somewhere down the line, depending on where I want to take my business. Right. But we have this sometimes we have this constant need to prove an identity that is wrong. And then if you could just peel off that armor that is holding someone back and just release that and let them really thrive and shine in a new identity, because we get the opportunity to choose. We can choose in any moment. And, Jesus talks about this in the Bible a lot, about the power of renewing your mind.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. That's awesome. And by the way, we're not afraid of mentioning the name Jesus or anything on this podcast. I don't beat people over the head with it, but we are not afraid to share that. So, all right, that's very cool. That's very, very cool. And you're being very transparent, which is great. So what's that old thing about the shoemakers' kids are always the barefoot ones, because they're not seeing, they're not seeing it in themselves, the exact problem that they have. So awesome. All right, let me shift gears a little bit. As I think our audience is really mostly franchisors.
Yeah.
It's franchise brokers, franchise consultants, franchisees. It's people who want to start a business and might be investigating franchising is one way to do that. So was there anything specific in your franchising experience? Because it's kind of unique for me to have someone that's not necessarily in franchising right now per se, but has franchising experience. When you were in the franchise industry, was there anything unique that you saw in the franchise world?
Well, yes. So having once been a franchise owner and now, building my coaching business from scratch by myself for 3 years, it is different in the sense that, a lot of the details and the steps to success are provided for you. Yeah. The framework is there. Yeah. And so it's literally plug and play. Yep. And, there are extenuating circumstances that might prevent someone from succeeding. But 9 times out of 10, what I experienced in coaching and in running my own franchise business is that it's all right here, which is how I ended up getting the NeuroCoaching certification.
So whether it's an independent business owner or an executive in a large company or a franchise owner, they're going to have this, am I good enough concerns, or they might have the people under me aren't getting it all done and I've got to step in, or I'm the only one who could do it right. So it really doesn't matter if it's a franchising or other. A lot of the challenges are pretty much the same. The limiting.
Yes, that's true. That's true. We are our own worst enemy.
Yeah, right? For sure. Yeah, for sure. All right, awesome. How do kind of a unique question maybe, because business owners are, a lot of them are just, the wild, wild west, and they're out there doing anything and everything. A lot of entrepreneurs like that, Elon Musk, he's okay when a rocket ship blows up and he just lost $250 million or whatever. He's okay with that. But real life, most business owners are probably trying to manage risk. And there was a unique thing that just hit me about the balance between good judgment and limiting beliefs. Is there a way to for people to define the differences are
Yes.
between it's
So
really limited, holding myself back, limiting belief versus I'm just think I'm making a good decision. Does that make
right.
sense?
No, I get it. That's a really, really good question. So I like to frame it like this. So we can make decisions from two different places. And really, I believe it's two different places. It is a place of fear or a place of faith.
Okay.
So though fear and faith carry very different energies. And so, you know, I'm not, so when you make a decision in faith, you are using a lot of logic. Like you're still naturally going to use a lot of logic to inform that decision. But if someone were to tap into, a, a religious, a spiritual connection, and really tap in and understand that, and take that into consideration to where you're being guided,
Mhm.
and trusting that, to me, that is the difference between a decision that's based in fear and based in faith.
Interesting.
And constantly, when you have that faithful decision, you look at risk and you go, but what if the best possible outcome happens?
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah. I
But
think you
what
said
if
that
this
at
is
the
my
first one.
path and I'm scared because my brain is wired to keep me where I'm at?
Yeah, yeah,
Like our brain is wired to keep us in what's familiar.
yeah, yeah.
So
Awesome.
anything that is outside of what it already knows, your brain is going to throw up red flags and make you and hold you back and make you feel afraid to do it. And it's sort of a shame that our brains operate like that still. Like this is a holdover from, just how we've evolved.
Yes, I was going to
But
say there were good reasons for that.
there were good
We were
reasons.
running away from saber-toothed
Yes,
tigers or Bronco
exactly.
horses or whatever.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. But that's the beauty, that's the power, I think, of faith, and incorporating faith in your decisions like that.
Okay. I'm going to really put you on the spot, and if it nothing jumps
That's
out,
okay.
that's okay. But are there questions or in this space of good judgment versus fear? Are there questions that people can be asking themselves to kind of help sort through that?
Well, so, I would the question is to really, look at what is truly at risk.
Oh,
So
very
what is
good.
the evidence? What's truly at risk? Like what is the evidence, and what does the evidence of the individual's past experience tell them? Because our brain has a negativity bias, and we have to constantly, in order to stay positive, we have to build an evidence log. We have to consciously look back and go, wait a minute, I was successful here, I was successful here, I did this, all of these things worked out in my favor. And the failures are not failures, they're only lessons. That's a reframe. So if you were to ask yourself, well, what if this failed? You have to look at what's the risk, right? You look at income, right? Money loss. How would that impact my life, my family? And you've got to weigh that pros and cons,
Yeah.
and make sure that you're not taking like a humongous risk that's going to make you bankrupt, right?
That's
Although that being
awesome.
said, one of the most inspiring stories that I heard, like in the early 2000s, was that Henry Ford filed bankruptcy something like 6 or 7 times before
Yeah.
he built Ford Motor Company, right? He
Yeah.
just kept
Yeah.
believing and believing and believing, and then, he hit gold. So
Yeah. Same here. Hershey, Milton Hershey, I think was the same thing.
I didn't know that
And
about Milton Hershey.
I,
Okay.
he had financial problems, I know, before it all hit. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Wow.
And there's
Wow.
no, yeah. And I always say this too. Again, if you're faith based, if the audience or someone's thinking about this faith based, I have what I call my Jordan River rocks. If we remember when the Israelites passed through the Jordan River, that God parted the river, and they want that God told them take rocks from the dry riverbed that you just walked on, so you remember what I did for you after the water all comes back. That what you just said isn't even a
Yes.
secular thought process, but just like that. I love you said, I think you said evidence log.
We need
I
evidence. We have to give our
love
brains
that.
evidence. We
Yeah.
have to give. So whether it's a log, whether you keep a note, or I encourage people to keep a notebook and reflect. And when they're stuck with decisions today, I have never found it where they're stuck with making a decision today. And if I ask them, have you ever been here in the past and how did it work out? They're like, oh yeah. Oh yeah. And it worked out just fine.
I love it.
Their brain forgot it. Their brain
I
forgot
love
it
it.
because we have this negativity bias.
I love it.
Can
I
I add
love it.
one more thing to this
Yeah,
really quick?
yeah.
And I'll just share a personal story of mine. When I was working in the franchise world, and I was at some point I had sold my magazines and I was running a performance coaching department, myself and a colleague. So we were in charge of 40 coaches, and they were coaching 500 franchise owners around the US. And I was in Zoom, and I had this reoccurring thought over and over and over again. Christine, if you spent even 50% of this time that you're spending here building someone else's dream, building the franchise owner's dream, and not, but even like the owners of the company, if you spend 50% of the time building your own dream, what could you create?
Yeah.
And I had that thought over and over and over again. And I, at some point, thought, this is not me. This is God.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love it.
So
No, thanks.
listen and observe, like, what thoughts keep coming up, keep coming to you over and over again, because it could very well be the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And again, I really appreciate your transparency. That has me shifting gear. Some practical things. I know at the workshop you spent a good deal of time giving us things we could actually do ourselves. So are there two or three practical ways that people could start to find their limiting beliefs if they're not aware of them, or if they're aware of them, a couple of basic steps that they could start right away on short of calling you, but what anything is there anything that you could think of that could be some practical steps people could do?
Yes, and if they want to call me, feel free. There's a link on my website to book a 15-minute alignment conversation, and I'd love to meet
Awesome.
you.
That's awesome.
But really, this starts with awareness. This process starts with awareness. It is getting curious about yourself. It's giving an honest look at how, goals that you've had in the past, and how long have you had those goals?
Yeah.
How many years have you had those goals?
Yeah.
And
Wow.
not met them,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
then you say, okay, well then what's getting in the way?
Yeah.
And when
Wow,
you
that's
keep
awesome.
drilling down to what's getting in the way, it comes down to your choices and your behavior. And your choices and your behavior is dictated by a belief system and the neural pathways that are running in your subconscious.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I know I do that on when my weekly planning. If I see something on my weekly achievement list for more than 2 weeks in a row that hasn't been done, I'm really rethinking that. I'm going back, okay, was this not important anymore? Or I need to do it and work on it. So that's a great
Yes.
suggestion. All right. Christine, you've been terrific, and this has really been helpful. I always ask people as my final question is there anything we haven't talked about? Is there a question I haven't asked that you feel really moved that I wanted to be sure that Don's audience got XYZ? Anything we haven't talked about, any questions I haven't asked that you wanted to share?
I would like to leave the audience with inspiration, which is, people like to say the sky's the limit. The sky is a limit. There are no limits. There are no limits to what we can create when we get control of our thoughts and our mind. And there's so much power in understanding that our brain, our subconscious, primarily got wired up in like when we were children. And we took on the mindsets, the beliefs, the frameworks of who surrounded us and what was going on in society at the time when we were young. And at any moment, you can decide to shed those layers and create something new that you want. It's as simple, it sounds crazy, but it's as simple as rewiring your brain. Think of neural pathways in your brain as like well-worn paths through a field, right? You walk that same path over and over and over again in a field, and that's a well-worn path. And everyone is operating with paths in our brain that we did not consciously choose.
Interesting.
To fit what we want to create in our future. So it's a matter of thinking new thoughts repeatedly, and wiring a new subconscious from which we can operate, so that our behaviors will match where we're going and who we want to become.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You've been great. And just to say to my audience, we'll see you next week.
Thanks so much for having me, Don.
You bet. You bet.